I've grown up on different communities, the intentional community in West Hoathly in Sussex, England, called Hoathly Hill, a 26-acre estate kind of based loosely around Rudolf Steiner, the Findhorn community in Scotland, the Hawthorne Valley community in upstate New York, another loosely Steiner-based community. Spent some time at Heart Consciousness Church in Harbin Hot Springs, and have also traveled the globe in different places and gotten a sense of both in personal relationships and community what brings out the best in people. And what this exercise is about, and this map is about, is a protocol, a set of technologies that is a hypothesis on a 10x community, meaning that 100 people participating in this event, and it certainly could be more, could generate 10 times the amount of well-being and value over just interacting randomly or by the default cultural protocol. So the first part of entering the space is a personal map and or a personal profile. And I've outlined this in other areas, but it covers all of the important parts about us as human beings, from dietary concerns and needs to relationship trigger points to key emotional events in our life, key family patterns in our life, whether or not we are sexually abused, whether or not we are on antidepressants, a profile of each human being that is designed to present a pattern. Because typically, what happens, if you will take the time to note this down, is there are very large imbalances in any person's life. Some people are doing all of the giving, some people are completely unconscious, some people are in a continual pattern of inviting abuse and then blame. And these patterns emerge as the intersection of a physical, mental, emotional, financial profile of a person's life. And it's very difficult to be medicinal without a sense, and diagnosis simply means the pattern, the observance and the naming of the pattern that is expressed in this personal detail. So this is an interactive process where, as you illuminate certain things, for example, are you in the HSP category, the 10 to 20% of mammals that is unusually sensitive to certain things, emotions, to energy, intuitive awareness, etc. Are you in the 10 to 20% that's highly sensitive? In your love languages, are you someone that connects more on the basis of touch or more on the basis of acts of service or ideas? To understand who you are as you generate this information in an interactive format, online media, in opportunities to learn in the areas that relate to you personally, open up so that it's a flow. You're giving information to the community, and the community is giving resources to you to respond to your particular patterns, to understand, to bring them to consciousness. So this is step one. Step two is the creation and presentation of written protocols designed to create 10x relationships. So what do you do if your best friend lies to you? And what do you do if, when you say, hey, you lied to me, and it's perfectly obvious, it's on video, it's whatever it is, they just turn red and walk away and then avoid you for the next week. Like, what do you do in that protocol, in that situation? Or what do you do if you're married and you want to be sexual with someone else? Or what do you do if you're feeling explosive levels of rage and you don't know how to deal with it? You see, these are symptoms that are very, very common in any community that have no protocol. There's no shared framework of understanding how, when, and where to respond to these symptoms of underlying imbalances, of underlying disease. For example, someone who feels incredible outbursts of rage is relating to part of the psyche, a certain age, a certain moment in time when they feel incredibly powerless. If there's no powerlessness, there's no rage. If there's no powerlessness, there's no hate. Hate is predicated on one of the variables being powerlessness. You usually have to have pain or humiliation, but mixed in there is powerlessness. So how do you empower that situation to pivot from a volatile reaction from a place of powerlessness to an empowered place? And what does that look like? Such that as you interact and say, okay, these are the symptoms, that there's okay, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and you check in on the symptoms again, just like a medical protocol. And what does the partner in the community, and this is the value of a 10X community, as opposed to a reactive, instinctual, fear-based culture, which is the default, is you also have the person on the other side understanding the protocols and agreeing to participate in the protocols or to challenge the protocols on a specific data-based metric, because protocols need to evolve. But by having written protocols, you can actually read and learn even before participating and committing to a 10X community. This is what I'll do if I realize I've told a lie to someone and want to resolve that. This is what I'll do if I've been sexually unfaithful. This is what I'll do if I discover my partner's been sexually unfaithful. This is what I'll do if I see someone stealing in the community. This is what I'll do if I realize I've stolen. This is the protocol that, based on the best data available, leads to repairing trust, leads to restoring well-being, leads to deeper understanding, leads to 10X living and growth. And so having these things written down and discussed at great length, certainly, in an open-ended protocol where the protocol stands unless new evidence of a better protocol emerges. And these can be certainly data tested within the community, because that's part of, later on gathering statistics. So the ever-evolving media library and book. Now, this is the process where people in the community write about things and using keywords so that they can be cross-referenced, provide a sense of the tapestry of the probability field within the community. That anytime something significant happens, we integrate that by writing about it, keywording it, so that it becomes part of the fabric of knowledge for anyone joining the community later on, for any of our colleagues, for any of our friends, that's there in a timeless platform, so that, I might write it at 10 a.m., but my partner might read it at 10 p.m. later that day or later that week, and a friend read it later, or a new friend who wants to learn about me sees my different, blog posts. So there's the evolving media of key experiences, positive and negative, and assessments, a protocol of assessing where, like, if there's a pain moment, how could that be learned, and where you can say, I don't know how to respond to this, and no one in the community knows how to respond to this. So it's it's listed as kind of unresolved. These are the unresolved edges. No system is perfect, so these are the unresolved edges within the community. But also a media library. These are the books that we've found to be useful. These are the techniques in the book. So a growing assortment of techniques, protocols, books, videos, etc., and an opportunity to read, particularly as we enter and discover these things relate to us personally and to our well-being. Statistics in areas that matter, both meta, meaning it's not disclosed data, so that as we enter information, some of it may not be personally linked, but that we have a portal to share statistical phenomena. Maybe I don't feel safe saying that my partner hit me last night when he was drunk, but they did, and that goes into the metadata as one hit within the community. And what were the situations? Alcohol, this. And in this way, you kind of get to see a micro map of what leads to what correlates with what. You might discover through that metadata pattern that 90% of all the problems in the community relate to alcohol, in which case it might be a protocol to eliminate alcohol except for 1 or 2 occasions a year. Could be. But you have the data upon which to make intelligent and responsive decisions. And statistics in areas that matter. This is about a 10x community of growth. So we're looking at things like well-being, mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually, financially. Logistically, we're looking at well-being. We're looking at quality of relationships, quality of partnerships. We're looking at levels of integrity. People do what they say, or they don't, or they think they feel differently than they think. So there's levels of integrity. But statistics in areas that matter, with the opportunity of having things be metadata, meaning this is not shared as being linked to me, but that every community member gets to see, okay, we've got 100 people, and we've got 3 incidents of physical hitting per 30 days in our community. Is that going up or down? Is that all grouped around certain events? Is that all grouped around certain people? Is there just one person in the community that loses it? In what situation? How do we respond? And that can lead to developing of new protocols. But again, a conscious assessment and ownership that this is our group, our space. We want to grow. We want to see growth in this area, which means we need to measure it over time. The app on 10x Relating. This is in many ways the technology in the container that holds much of this. Certainly there might be workshops. Certainly there might be afternoon activities. There might be social gatherings. There might be work parties. If this is taking place on an intentional community of living together, this makes a lot more sense and is a lot more natural. This becomes a framework for conscious growth in the community. If it's a school teaching healthy relationships, this becomes a peripheral armature that supports the intention of such a relationship-oriented school. But the app on 10x Relating, where, again, you have the profile on the app, you have the actions taken. So, for example, if you say, I'm a sexual abuse survivor, there is a series of actions that can strengthen the healing of that protocol. One might be to learn Aikido. Another might be to read this book on sexual abuse. Another might be to do a trauma mapping in this way to see if there's residual trauma. Another thing might be to clarify boundaries that are extra sensitive so that people in the community to know. So I don't want you to do this, or this without invitation. And so these are a series of actions. As you take the actions I have taken at least 8 Aikido classes. I have read this book and I have read this book. I've watched this video. I have clarified my boundaries. I have practiced in a yes and no exercise with 3 different people affirming my boundaries, so to get, kinetically familiar. Okay, so I've done those actions, or I haven't, and that's visible, so that there's an awareness of the level of responsibility within an individual, and how to partner with them. Obviously, if they've done that, you don't offer them Aikido classes if they've already done that. If they've already done the exercise and said, I'm done, you don't offer them. But if they haven't done that, you might approach them and say, hey, would you like to do a yes and no exercise with me? I see that you've repeatedly been violated in this and this area. This is an exercise that helped. Would you like to do it with me? And if they say no, then you have a pattern emerging where the wound is being defended against healing. And so that becomes an obvious emergent pattern over time with the actions taken and the actions not taken based on the data of what works. It's not about pushing people to do dysfunctional things. It's about people voting on and sharing data based on the statistical probability field of what most helps people in that area. It's like if you've got flu, taking flu medicine is the most likely thing to cure that flu. So if you've got flu and you're not taking flu medicine, what's going on there? Is it a defending of the wound, the protecting of the internalized abuser? What's going on? Or is there some legitimate reason? Well, I don't want to participate in this and that, or this has a side effect, etc. So that becomes more visible, the actions taken. Relationship building protocols within the app, where if you want to start a relationship, you might express interest on the app. If they express interest back, then the app can guide through a protocol where both people read each other's profile, learn about each other's boundaries and preferences, and the app makes sure to pace it so that it's not overwhelming for either person. And one good way an app can do that is, for example, ask both people a question and how risky does sexuality feel in this relationship? How risky? For one, it might be a 10. For another person, it might be a 5 or a 2. But you don't get to exchange the information until both people answer the question. And so in that sense, getting prompts from the app saying, so-and-so answered this question, but if you'd like to answer it, you can exchange, the answer. That's a way of bringing consciousness and symmetry as well as flow and growth in intimacy to the relationship. And this should vary, meaning it's important, for example, if you have an Olympic runner and someone in a wheelchair and you want to go for a walk together, you go at the speed of the person in the wheelchair. If you've got a sexual abuse survivor who has new trauma around that and you've got someone else who's very sexually comfortable, you go at the speed of the sexual abuse survivor. You use the protocols that would keep the sexual abuse survivor safe. If one person has an open wound and the other person is perfectly healthy, you engage in a way that is safe for the open wound. Some things get reduced to the lowest common denominator, which means it's very important to know what those common denominators are and good protocols for staying safe and healthy as defined consciously by both the reference data, the community protocols, and the person who wants to set specific boundaries. Now, this also provides metadata to say, okay, this is the suggested protocol of the most intelligent way for someone who has a sexual abuse history to go about entering a sexual relationship. This is the most healthy protocol for someone who has an eating addiction to enter a relationship. It should be like this, and they define this, and your partner acknowledges this, that they won't, offer you wine if you're trying to quit drinking, that they won't smoke next to you if you're trying to quit smoking. This is the protocol. And is the person willing to abide by that protocol? And if they're not, they just want to fuck you, but they really don't care whether you succeed in quitting drinking or smoking or anything else. In fact, if a nice drink will facilitate the fuck, who cares? That's obviously not leading towards 10x community growth. It's leading to sex addiction and lust over friendship. So it's obviously not an area to pursue. So relationship protocols, and then how do they do? And there might be 2 or 3 suggested protocols, and someone might try one, and if that doesn't work, try another, and see which protocols over time work for most people. Completely transparent, a history where people can respond and say, this bit felt awkward, this bit didn't work, that bit worked great, and you get to see over time which bits were very strong winners and which were not. Daily feedback within the community protocol gives a sense of the trends, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, logistically within the community. You just say, 1 to 10, how are things doing in general? Are things going up or down? With response protocols, if someone is nosediving and failing and shaming and feeling terrible within the community, that everyone gets an alert about that. And there's a protocol for responding. We've got someone who's doing the actions, who's joined, who's being visible, and they're getting hurt as a result of joining our community. This is our community. And we are going to respond. We're going to do this, and we're going to work until that rises and until that person either gracefully exits the community in a place that's better than when they arrived, or rises and learns how to master these technologies within the community and continues to flourish. So the daily feedback is an important part of this kind of 10x commitment to get lots of data of what is and isn't working for who and why. You might discover from that metadata that everyone with an alcohol addiction problem gets worse within the community, but for every other demographic, it's good. So then we learn, we have a problem serving people with alcohol addictions in our community. And that becomes the number one priority to respond, given the prevalence of addiction in the culture. So the app, 10x Relating, which kind of contains this, through the app, you can, as you're filling out the profile, new questions can come, you can respond, the app stores that, you can invite people to engage, you can participate in upcoming events, you can suggest exercises. I want to practice this exercise. Is there anyone in the community that wants to practice this? You might also within the app have a guest feature where if you have friends outside the community and you want to begin to invite them in the direction of the community or just engage with them in a healthy way, that you could say, here's the app, download it as a guest, here's the sign in as a guest, and I'm looking for someone to engage and practice this exercise with. Is that you? So next we come to research partners, which is not integral to this, but it's a way of being of service because there's so little metadata and useful ongoing research in these arenas. And it's one of the single most important things on the planet, that to develop this in the direction of we're a major research institution, be it of anthropology, be it of sociology, be it of addiction, whatever these interests, that there is metadata that's correlating a control group of 100 people that is formed before, on the outside of the community, and these 100 people, so that we can see the influence of the protocols for specific demographics and export that as metadata. And then finally, building on community strengths, one of the most important things within the community is to list all the things we're good at, all the things we'd like to contribute. I'd like to be a good listener for 1 hour a week to a community member. Okay, well, I can list that as a resource that any community member can sign up. The first person who signs up, or maybe 3 people want to sign up, and I pick one. I pick the protocol of, is it first come, first serve? Is it someone that I select? Is it anyone that meets these criteria? Anyone who submits this questionnaire, who does this and this, I will listen to. So these are creating objects of resource within the community. And outlining strengths. This is the best listener in the whole community. This is the best empathizer around sexual abuse. This is the best healer around subtle forms of ankle twisting. This is the best person who makes casseroles. This is the best party host. This is the best mixer of non-alcoholic drinks. These are the strengths within the community, and they are available in this format to people in this way. These are available for money. 1 hour a week is donated. Everything else has to be paid at this rate. Whatever it is that is listed as resources, networking points, ideas, books written by community members, etc., so that the community can grow abundantly and celebrate the strengths, which can also be validated and appreciated and honored as people grow to note, your hour that you spent with me led to my wife learning this, led to our marriage getting 10% better, led to our child getting 5% less abused, led to us making a decision to do this, and our life has changed. And that's correlated and measured. The ripple of well-being flowing out into the community is measured. And then finally going back to the personal map, and which is always being updated. I cannot think of a more satisfying and enjoyable and conscious way to engage with a group of 30, 70, 100 people using the fluid technology of our phones, tablets, laptops, living together in intentional space, referencing the 10xliving.org map I've created, living in co-housing environments, living nearby, spending time in each other's places, meeting once a month and having casual side relationships outside of structured space. This is a rich tapestry of growth, and I invite everyone to copy and share this ritual, this recipe, and feed the data forward, feed the data forward and back to me, back to what is and isn't working for you.